My sister betrayed me by selling our family home. Then she discovered I still owned 51%. The champagne glass slipped from Maya's fingers, crystal shattering against the marble floor of what used to be her childhood home. The sound echoed through the renovated foyer, where exposed brick walls now displayed abstract art worth more than most people's cars. Her sister Zara stood frozen by the modern steel staircase, real estate documents clutched in her manicured hands, her face drained of all color. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. What do you mean, 51%? Zara's voice came out as barely a whisper, but in the cavernous space of their transformed family home, every word carried weight. Maya bent down slowly, picking up the largest shard of crystal, watching how it caught the light from the new designer chandelier. The same spot where their grandmother's old fixture used to hang, the one that cast rainbow patterns on the walls every sunset. Now everything was clean lines and cold surfaces, stripped of every memory that had once made this place home. Exactly what I said, Maya replied, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. I own 51% of this house. I always have. The morning had started like any other Tuesday. Maya was reviewing quarterly reports in her cramped downtown apartment when the notification popped up on her phone. A tagged photo on social media posted by someone she barely remembered from high school. The caption read, "Stunning renovation reveal at the old Brennan place on Maple Street. New owners really outdid themselves." Maya's coffee cup remained suspended halfway to her lips as she stared at the image. The house looked nothing like she remembered. Gone were the blue shutters her father had painted every spring, replaced by sleek black metal panels. The wraparound porch, where she'd spent countless summer evenings, had been enclosed in glass, transformed into what looked like a modern conservatory. Even the old oak tree in the front yard had been removed, replaced by geometric landscaping that belonged more in a corporate plaza than a residential neighborhood. But it was still unmistakably 847 Maple Street, the house where she had grown up, the house her parents had left to both daughters in their will 3 years ago, the house that Zara had been managing since Maya lived 2 hours away in the city. Maya's hands shook as she scrolled through the comments. Neighbors she'd known since childhood were praising the transformation, asking about the contractors, wondering about the cost. One comment made her blood run cold. "Lucky new family getting such a beautiful home. Hope they love it as much as the Brennans did." New family. Maya grabbed her phone and called Zara immediately. Straight to voicemail. She tried again. Same result. By the third attempt, she was already pulling on her coat and grabbing her car keys. The 2-hour drive to Millbrook felt like the longest journey of her life. Maya's mind raced through possibilities, each more unsettling than the last. Maybe Zara had rented it out to someone who'd made unauthorized changes. Maybe she'd hired contractors without consulting Maya first. Maybe there was some reasonable explanation for why their childhood home looked like it belonged in an architecture magazine rather than a family neighborhood. But deep in her chest, a familiar weight was settling. The same feeling she'd carried for years whenever Zara made decisions that affected them both without bothering to include her in the conversation. The same feeling she'd had when Zara moved back into the house after their parents died, claiming she needed time to figure things out, while Maya continued paying her half of the property taxes from her apartment in the city. Maya had always been the practical one, the one who handled details and paperwork and made sure things got done. Zara was the creative spirit, the one who needed space to pursue her art and find herself. It had been that way since they were children. Maya did homework while Zara painted. Maya worked part-time jobs in high school, while Zara focused on her portfolio. Maya went to state school on scholarships, while their parents helped fund Zara's expensive art degree. The pattern had continued into adulthood. When their parents became ill, Maya was the one who researched medical options and coordinated care, driving down from the city every weekend while Zara lived in the house and provided what she called emotional support. When the funeral arrangements needed to be made, Maya handled the logistics, while Zara designed a beautiful memorial program. When the will needed to be probated, Maya dealt with the lawyers, while Zara grieved in her own way. It wasn't that Maya resented taking care of things. She was good at it, and someone had to handle the practical matters. But somewhere along the way, being the responsible one had also meant being the one whose opinions mattered less, whose presence was assumed rather than valued, whose consent was implied rather than sought. As Maya pulled into the driveway of 847 Maple Street, that weight in her chest became a crushing pressure. The house was even more transformed than the photos had suggested. Every surface had been updated, every detail modernized. It looked expensive. It looked intentional. It looked like someone had invested serious money in making it perfect for sale. The front door opened before Maya could even get out of her car. Zara appeared in the doorway wearing paint-splattered jeans and an oversized sweater, looking every inch the artistic sister who'd been working on creative projects in their childhood home. But her expression was careful, guarded in a way that made Maya's stomach clench. "Maya!" Zara called out, her voice carrying that bright, slightly forced cheerfulness she used when she was nervous. "What a surprise! You should have called first. I would have made lunch or something." Maya stepped out of her car slowly, taking in the full scope of the changes. "I did call 3 times. You didn't answer." "Oh, my phone's been acting up lately. You know how it is." Zara tucked a strand of auburn hair behind her ear, a gesture Maya recognized from childhood. It meant Zara was lying. "The house looks different," Maya said, walking toward the front steps. Up close, she could see that even the old stone walkway had been replaced with modern concrete pavers. "It's very modern," Maya said. "I thought it was time for a change," Zara replied, but she wasn't meeting Maya's eyes. "Coffee? I just made a fresh pot." As Zara busied herself with mugs and cream, Maya wandered through the first floor, cataloging the changes. The living room where they'd watched Christmas movies was now an open-concept space with furniture that looked designed for a magazine spread rather than actual comfort. The dining room where their mother had hosted family dinners was now part of the same open area, defined only by a different light fixture hanging over a sleek table that could seat 12. Every trace of their family's presence had been erased. Every memory had been painted over, replaced, or removed entirely. It was as if the Brennan family had never existed here. "When did you do all this?" Maya asked when she returned to the kitchen. Zara's hand paused as she poured coffee. "It's been a gradual process. Little projects here and there over the past year."
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
"This isn't little projects, Zara. This is a complete renovation. This had to cost at least $100,000. "You're exaggerating." But Zara's voice lacked conviction. Maya accepted the coffee mug, noting that even the dishes were new. Expensive-looking white porcelain instead of their mother's cheerful blue and yellow set. Where did you get the money? The question hung in the air between them. Zara had always been vague about her finances, supporting herself through a combination of art sales, freelance graphic design work, and what she called various projects. Maya had assumed their parents had left Zara enough savings to get by, just as they'd left Maya a modest inheritance. But this level of renovation suggested access to serious capital. I'd been doing well with my work lately, and, living here rent-free for 3 years, I was able to save up. Something in her tone made Maya set down her coffee cup. "Zara, what aren't you telling me?" "What do you mean?" "I saw the social media post. Someone called the people who live here now the new family. What did they mean by that?" Zara's face went pale. "I don't know what you're talking about." "The post about the renovation. The comments about the new owners." Maya pulled out her phone, showing Zara the screenshot she'd taken. "What new owners?" For a long moment, Zara stared at the phone screen. Then she sat down heavily in one of the new bar stools, her shoulders sagging. "Maya, I can explain." "Explain what?" "I sold the house." The words hit Maya like a physical blow. She gripped the edge of the marble countertop to steady herself. "You what?" "I sold it last month. The closing was 2 weeks ago." Zara's voice was barely above a whisper. "You sold our house? Our parents' house? Without telling me?" "I meant to tell you. I just didn't know how. And technically, it's not sold yet.
I mean, the paperwork is done, but the new owners don't take possession until next week. I was going to explain everything before then. Maya thought like the floor was shifting beneath her feet. Zara, this is my house too. You can't just sell it without my permission. I know, but Maya, I needed the money. And you never come here anyway. You have your life in the city, your career, your apartment. This place was just sitting here, and I had all these debts from the renovations, and the property taxes were getting so expensive, and the buyers made such a good offer. How much? Maya's voice came out flat, emotionless. What? How much did you sell it for? Zara fidgeted with her coffee mug. $450,000. Maya stared at her sister. The house had been appraised at $300,000 when their parents died. With the renovations, $450,000 was probably a fair price, maybe even conservative. And you were planning to give me half? Of course. Maya, I would never cheat you out of your share. I have a check ready for you. $225,000. That's your half after the real estate fees and closing costs. $225,000 was more money than Maya had ever had at one time. It would pay off her student loans, cover the down payment on a better apartment, maybe even let her take some time off to figure out her next career move. It should have felt like a windfall. Instead, it felt like theft. You sold our childhood home without asking me. You erased every trace of our family, turned it into some kind of showplace, and then sold it to strangers? And you think a check makes that okay? Maya, please. I know you're upset, but try to see it from my perspective. I've been living here for 3 years, taking care of everything, paying for maintenance, dealing with repairs. You've visited maybe 5 times since the funeral. This place means more to me than it does to you. It means more to you? Zara, this is where we grew up. This is where Mom taught us to bake. This is where Dad built that treehouse in the backyard. This is where we buried our hamster and had birthday parties and learned to ride bikes. How can you say it means more to you when you destroyed all of that? I didn't destroy anything. I improved it. I made it beautiful. You made it soulless. Maya looked around the sterile kitchen, remembering the warmth it used to hold. This isn't improvement, Zara. This is erasure. Well, maybe some things needed to be erased. Maybe some of us didn't want to live in a museum to our dead parents forever. Maybe some of us wanted to move forward instead of staying stuck in the past. The words stung, but Maya pushed through the pain. Moving forward doesn't mean selling the past to the highest bidder without consulting the people who shared it with you. I was going to consult you. I just wanted to get everything ready first, make sure it was perfect. I knew you'd have concerns, and I wanted to have all the answers. My concerns? Zara, I'm a co-owner of this property. This isn't about consulting me. This is about the fact that you can't legally sell a house that belongs to 2 people without both people signing the paperwork. Zara's face went very still. What do you mean?
Maya felt that familiar weight in her chest again, but this time it came with a strange sense of clarity. I mean, I never signed anything. I never agreed to sell this house. I never even knew you were planning to sell it. But the lawyers handled all the paperwork. They said everything was in order. What lawyers? The ones who handled the sale. Peterson and Associates. They said they'd taken care of all the legal requirements. Maya pulled out her phone and did a quick search. Peterson and Associates was a real estate law firm in Millbrook with good reviews and a professional website. Did you tell them I was a co-owner? Of course I did. I gave them copies of the will and everything. And they said they could proceed without my signature? Zara's expression was becoming increasingly uncertain. They said they'd handle all the legal aspects. I assumed that meant they'd contact you if they needed anything. Maya felt a cold realization settling over her. Zara, show me the paperwork. What paperwork? The sale documents, the deed transfer, the closing statements, all of it. Zara disappeared upstairs and returned a few minutes later with a thick folder. Maya spread the documents across the dining room table, scanning through pages of legal language and official stamps. Everything looked legitimate at first glance. The property was correctly described, the sale price was accurate, The buyer's information was complete, but as Maya read more carefully, she began to notice discrepancies. The seller was listed as Zara Brennan, sole owner. There was no mention of Maya's ownership interest anywhere in the documentation. Zara, Maya said slowly, according to these documents, you're the only owner of this house. That can't be right. Zara leaned over Maya's shoulder, reading the paperwork. I told them about the will. I told them we both inherited it. Maya flipped to the deed transfer. Sure enough, it showed the property being transferred from Zara Brennan, sole owner, to the new buyers. Did you tell them the actual will? I gave them a copy, yes. Do you have the original will here? Zara nodded and retrieved another folder from a drawer in the kitchen. Maya read through their parents' will carefully, looking for the specific language about the house. There it was, clear as day. We leave our home at 847 Maple Street, Millbrook, to our daughters Maya Brennan and Zara Brennan, to be held as tenants in common, with each daughter owning an equal 50% interest. Maya looked up at her sister. The will clearly states that we each own 50%. There's no way competent lawyers would miss that. Then there must have been some mistake. I'll call them tomorrow and get it sorted out. But Maya was still reading, and something else had caught her attention. At the bottom of the will, there were 2 witness signatures, as required by law. But there was also something else, a codicil, an addition to the original will, dated 6 months after their parents' deaths. Maya had never seen this document before. The codicil was brief, just a single paragraph, but its content made Maya's hands start to shake. It purported to modify the original bequest, transferring Maya's 50% interest in the house to Zara, making her the sole owner. The reason given was Maya's expressed desire to liquidate her interest in the property and her request that her sister take full ownership to simplify management. The codicil was signed by both Maya and Zara, and witnessed by 2 people Maya had never heard of. Maya stared at the document, reading it 3 times to make sure she understood what she was seeing. Then she looked up at her sister, who had gone very pale. Zara? Maya said quietly, what is this? What? Maya held up the codicil. This document that says I signed over my ownership of the house to you. This document that I've never seen before in my life. Zara's eyes widened as she looked at the paper. I don't know. I've never seen that before either. This is your signature, Maya pointed to the bottom of the page, and this is supposed to be mine. Maya studied her own signature on the document. It was close, but not quite right. The loops were different, the slant was wrong, the pressure was too light. Someone had tried to forge her signature, and they'd done a decent job, but it wasn't perfect. Zara, Maya said, her voice deadly calm, did you forge my signature on this document? No, Maya, I swear, I have no idea where that came from. Maya looked at her sister's face, searching for signs of deception. Zara looked genuinely shocked, but Maya had learned over the years that Zara was good at looking innocent when convenient. If you didn't create this document, then who did? I don't know. Maybe the lawyers. Maybe they needed something for their files and just created it automatically. Lawyers don't forge signatures and create false legal documents, Zara. That would be fraud. The word hung between them like an accusation. Maya folded the codicil carefully and put it in her purse. Then she gathered up the sale documents and studied them again. I need to make some phone calls, Maya said finally. Maya, please, let me call Peterson and Associates first. I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation. I'm sure there is too. Maya stood up and walked toward the front door. I'm going back to the city. I'll be in touch. Where are you going? Maya paused at the door and turned back to look at her sister standing in the kitchen of their transformed childhood home. I'm going to figure out exactly what happened here, and then I'm going to fix it. The drive back to the city gave Maya time to think. She pulled over at a rest stop halfway home and called her own lawyer, a woman named Sarah Chen who'd helped her with her apartment lease and employment contract when she'd moved to the city. Sarah, I need help with a property issue. Can you meet me tomorrow morning? Of course.
What kind of property issue? Maya explained the situation as clearly as she could, from the social media post, to the forged codicil, to the completed sale of a house she'd never agreed to sell. Sarah was quiet for a long moment after Maya finished talking. Maya, if what you're telling me is accurate,
This isn't just a property dispute. This is fraud, potentially criminal fraud. What do you mean? If someone forged your signature on a legal document to transfer ownership of real estate, that's a felony. If your sister was involved, she could face serious criminal charges. Maya felt sick. I don't want to send my sister to jail. I just want to understand what happened. I understand. But Maya, you need to be prepared for the possibility that this situation is more serious than a simple misunderstanding. Can you be in my office at 9 tomorrow morning? Maya agreed and spent the rest of the drive home trying to process what she learned. By the time she reached her apartment, she was exhausted, but she knew she wouldn't be able to sleep. Instead, she sat at her kitchen table and made a list of everything she needed to do. First, she would meet with Sarah and get a clear understanding of her legal options. Second, she would contact Peterson and Associates directly and find out exactly what they knew about her ownership interest. Third, she would do some research on the buyers and find out if they were innocent victims or somehow involved in whatever scheme had taken place. But as Maya sat in her small apartment looking out at the city lights, she realized that the most important thing wasn't the legal process or the money or even getting the house back. The most important thing was understanding how her sister had been willing to erase not just their childhood home, but Maya herself in pursuit of whatever she thought she needed. Maya had always known that Zara was self-centered, that she had a talent for making her own needs seem more important than anyone else's. But this was different. This wasn't just thoughtlessness or artistic temperament. This was calculated deception, carried out over months, designed to permanently separate Maya from her inheritance and her past. As Maya finally went to bed that night, she wasn't thinking about revenge or punishment. She was thinking about the sisters she'd thought she knew and wondering if that person had ever really existed at all. The next morning, Maya was waiting outside Sarah Chin's office building when it opened at 8:30. Sarah arrived a few minutes later carrying coffee and looking like she'd already been working for hours. "I did some research on your situation last night," Sarah said as they rode the elevator to her floor. "It's even more complicated than I initially thought." In Sarah's office, Maya spread out all the documents she'd taken from Zara's house. Sarah examined each one carefully, making notes and occasionally frowning. "The good news," Sarah said, "is that you definitely still own 50% of that house. The codicil is clearly forged, and even if it weren't, there are procedural requirements that weren't met. You can't just sign over real estate with a handwritten note." What's the bad news? The bad news is that the sale has already closed. The new owners have taken possession, they've paid for the house, and they're innocent parties who had no reason to suspect fraud. Getting this resolved is going to be complicated and expensive. Maya sank back in her chair. "So what are my options?" "Several. First, you can file a lawsuit to void the sale on the grounds that it was fraudulent. That would potentially get you the house back, but it could take years to resolve, and the new owners would likely countersue for damages." "What else?" "Second, you can file a claim against your sister for the value of your 50% interest, plus damages for fraud. That would be quicker than voiding the sale, but you'd end up with money instead of the house." "And third?" Sarah hesitated. "Third, you can file criminal charges for fraud and forgery. If your sister is convicted, she could face significant jail time, and you might be able to recover damages through the criminal restitution process." Maya stared out the window of Sarah's office, watching people hurry along the sidewalk below. "What would you recommend?" "Honestly, I think you need more information before you decide. We should start by contacting the law firm that handled the sale and finding out exactly what they knew and when they knew it. It's possible your sister was manipulated or deceived as well." Maya nodded. "Can you make that call?" Sarah dialed Peterson and Associates and asked to speak with the lawyer who had handled the Brennan property sale. After a few minutes on hold, she was connected with someone named Michael Peterson. "Mr. Peterson, I'm calling about the recent sale of 847 Maple Street in Millbrook. My client Maya Brennan has some questions about the transaction." Maya could hear Peterson's voice through the phone, but couldn't make out his words. Sarah's expression grew increasingly serious as the conversation continued. "I see. And you have documentation of that? Can you fax that over to me today?" "Yes, my client will be filing a formal complaint." "Thank you." Sarah hung up and turned to Maya. "We have a problem." "What kind of problem?" According to Peterson, Zara provided them with a power of attorney document that gave her the authority to act on your behalf in the sale of the house. Maya felt her stomach drop. "A power of attorney? I never signed any power of attorney." "He's faxing over a copy of the document now. But Maya, if this is another forgery, your sister is in serious legal trouble. Powers of attorney are heavily regulated, and forging one is a federal crime. 20 minutes later, Sarah's fax machine delivered a copy of a power of attorney document dated 8 months earlier. According to the document, Maya had given Zara broad authority to handle all matters related to their parents' estate, including the sale of real property. Maya studied her signature on the power of attorney. Like the codicil, it was close, but not quite right. "This is forged too," she said quietly. Sarah examined the document carefully. "Maya, I have to ask you directly. Is there any possibility that you signed this and forgot about it? Maybe during a stressful time after your parents' death?" "No," Maya's voice was firm. "I would never sign something like this without reading it carefully, and I would never give Zara the authority to sell the house without consulting me." "Then we're looking at multiple felonies. Document forgery, wire fraud, real estate fraud, possibly others." Maya sat in silence for several minutes, processing the full scope of what her sister had done. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision or a simple misunderstanding. Zara had planned this carefully, forging multiple documents over a period of months, lying to lawyers and real estate agents, and ultimately stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars that rightfully belonged to Maya. "What happens now?" Maya asked. "That depends on what you want to happen. But Maya, I need to tell you something as your lawyer and as someone who's handled fraud cases before. This kind of systematic deception rarely happens in isolation. If your sister was willing to forge your signature and commit fraud to steal your inheritance, there's a good chance this isn't the first time she's done something like this." Maya thought about all the years of Zara's financial vagueness, her mysterious income sources, her ability to afford an expensive lifestyle without any apparent means of support. How many other people had Zara deceived? How many other schemes had Maya been too trusting to notice?
"I want to file a lawsuit," Maya said finally. "I want to recover my 50% interest in that house, and I want compensation for what she stole from me." "What about criminal charges?" Maya hesitated. Despite everything Zara had done, the thought of sending her sister to prison felt wrong. But then she thought about the new owners of her childhood home, innocent people who'd bought a house they thought was legitimately for sale. She thought about the years of lies and manipulation. She thought about the forged documents and the calculated deception. "Let's start with the civil lawsuit," Maya said. "But I want you to report the forgeries to the district attorney's office as well. They can decide whether to press criminal charges." Sarah nodded. "I'll get the paperwork started today. But Maya, you should know that once we file these complaints, there's no going back. Your relationship with your sister will never be the same." Maya looked out the window again, thinking about the sterile kitchen in their childhood home, the abstract art on the walls where family photos used to hang, the modern furniture that held no memories. "I don't think we have a relationship to preserve." Maya spent the next few days trying to focus on her work, but her mind kept drifting to the legal proceedings Sarah was initiating. She found herself checking her phone constantly, waiting for updates, expecting angry calls from Zara that never came. On Friday afternoon, Sarah called with news. "The district attorney's office is interested in the case. They want to meet with you next week to discuss the forgeries." "What does that mean?" "It means they're considering filing criminal charges." "Maya, this is serious. If they move forward, your sister could be facing years in prison." That weekend, Maya drove back to Millbrook, but not to see Zara. Instead, she went to the courthouse and looked up public records related to their parents' estate. What she found made her feel sick. According to the probate court filings, Zara had been appointed as the executor of their parents' estate, which was normal since she lived locally. But the inventory of estate assets that Zara had filed with the court showed significant discrepancies from what Maya knew to be true. Their father had been a successful accountant with a substantial life insurance policy and a retirement account worth over $200,000. Their mother had inherited jewelry and artwork from her own parents that had been appraised at nearly $50,000. The family home had been valued at $300,000. But according to Zara's estate inventory, the life insurance had been used to pay for medical expenses and funeral costs. The retirement account had been depleted by their father's final illness. The jewelry and artwork had been donated to charity. The house was the only significant asset remaining, and it was heavily mortgaged. Maya knew this was all false. She'd seen the insurance paperwork and the retirement account statements. Her parents had been frugal people who'd planned carefully for their deaths. There should have been plenty of money to cover their final expenses without depleting their entire estate. Maya made copies of all the court documents and drove to Sarah's office first thing Monday morning. Sarah reviewed the probate filings and whistled softly. "Maya, I think your sister has been running a long-term fraud scheme. She's been systematically stealing from your parents' estate for years." "How much money are we talking about?" Sarah did some quick calculations. Based on these discrepancies, probably close to $500,000, maybe more. Maya felt dizzy. $500,000? The estate inventory she filed with the court bears no resemblance to the actual assets your parents had at the time of their death. And as executor, she had legal authority to access all of their accounts and liquidate their assets. But she was supposed to distribute everything according to the will. Exactly. Instead, it looks like she kept most of it for herself and then tried to steal your share of the house as well. Maya thought about Zara's expensive renovations, her designer clothes, her ability to live without working a regular job. All of it had been funded by their parents' money that should have been split between both daughters. What do I do now? Now we file an amended lawsuit that includes the estate fraud. And Maya, I really think you need to consider cooperating with the criminal investigation. This isn't just about your inheritance anymore. This is about your sister systematically stealing from your parents and lying to the court system. That afternoon, Maya met with an assistant district attorney named James Rodriguez. He was younger than she'd expected, but he'd clearly done his homework on Zara's case. "Ms. Brennan, we're looking at potential charges of estate fraud, document forgery, wire fraud, and perjury. The evidence you've provided suggests a pattern of criminal behavior spanning several years. What would happen if you press charges? If your sister is convicted on all counts, she could face 10 to 15 years in prison." Maya closed her eyes. 10 to 15 years. For all her anger at Zara's betrayal, the thought of her sister spending that much time in prison was overwhelming. "I need some time to think about this," Maya said. Rodriguez nodded. "I understand. This is your sister we're talking about. But, Ms. Brennan, I want you to consider something. If your sister was willing to defraud your parents' estate and forge legal documents to steal from you, how many other people has she victimized? We've already found evidence that she may have used fraudulent documents to obtain credit cards and loans. This could be much bigger than just your family." Maya spent that evening walking around her neighborhood, trying to process everything she learned. Her sister wasn't just selfish or thoughtless. She was a criminal who'd been systematically stealing from their family for years. The Zara who painted beautiful landscapes and talked about following her artistic dreams was the same person who forged Maya's signature and lied to court officials and stolen hundreds of thousands of dollars from their parents' estate. But she was still Maya's sister. They'd shared a childhood, learned to ride bikes together, helped each other through their parents' illness and death. Was Maya really prepared to send her to prison for over a decade? Maya's phone rang as she was walking home. Zara's name appeared on the screen. For the first time since the confrontation at the house, Maya answered. "Maya?" Zara's voice was shaky, uncertain. "I heard you hired a lawyer." Word travels fast in Millbrook. "Maya, please, can we talk? I know you're angry, but I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding." Maya stopped walking. "What kind of misunderstanding?" "About the house sale. About the documents. I think someone at the law firm made mistakes. I never meant for any of this to happen." "Zara, I've seen the forged power of attorney. I've seen the fake codicil. I've seen the estate inventory you filed with the probate court that lists assets you know didn't exist." There was silence on the other end of the phone. "Zara, are you there?"
Maya, I can explain everything. I'm listening. Another long pause. "Can we meet? I don't want to do this over the phone." Maya considered the request. Part of her wanted to hear what explanation Zara could possibly offer for years of systematic fraud. But another part of her was afraid that seeing her sister would weaken her resolve. Where? Maya asked finally. The coffee shop on Main Street? The one where we used to go after school? Maya remembered the place, a small cafe that had been run by the same family for decades, where she and Zara had shared hot chocolate and studied for tests while their parents worked late. It felt like neutral ground, public enough to prevent a scene, but private enough for honest conversation. Tomorrow at 2, Maya said. And Zara, don't bring any more lies. Maya arrived at the coffee shop 15 minutes early, choosing a table in the back corner where they could talk without being overheard. The place looked exactly the same as it had 20 years ago, down to the mismatched chairs and the handwritten menu board behind the counter. Mrs. Patterson, the owner's daughter who'd taken over the business, waved from behind the espresso machine. Zara walked in precisely at 2, looking smaller somehow than she had at the house. She wore jeans and the simple sweater, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. No makeup, no jewelry, none of the polished presentation she usually maintained. She looked exhausted. "Thank you for coming," Zara said as she sat down across from Maya. "I ordered you a cappuccino, extra foam, no sugar. Unless you've changed your coffee preferences along with everything else." Zara managed a weak smile. Still the same. They sat in silence for a moment, each waiting for the other to begin. Finally, Maya spoke. "The district attorney wants to press criminal charges against you. Multiple felonies. 10 to 15 years in prison." Zara's face went white. "Maya, please, you have to understand, I never meant for things to go this far." "Then explain it to me. Start from the beginning and tell me the truth." Zara stared into her coffee for a long moment before speaking. "It started when Mom and Dad got sick. You remember how expensive everything was, the treatments, the medications, the private nurses?" "I remember, but Dad had insurance." "The insurance didn't cover everything, and Mom wanted to try that experimental treatment in Houston, the one that cost $30,000. Maya did remember. Their mother had been desperate to try every possible option, and their father had been willing to spend whatever it took to give her hope. "So you used money from their savings," Maya said. "At first, yes. But then Dad's condition got worse, and he needed round-the-clock care. The insurance company kept denying claims. I was spending thousands of dollars a week just to keep them comfortable. Why didn't you tell me? I could have helped." Zara looked up at Maya with something that might have been regret. "You were dealing with your own problems. You just started that new job. You were struggling to make rent in the city. I didn't want to burden you with financial stress on top of everything else." Maya felt a familiar stab of frustration. "That wasn't your decision to make, Zara. They were my parents, too." "I know, but I was there dealing with it every day. The doctors, the insurance companies, the bills. It was easier to just handle it myself." "So you spent their money. All of it." Zara nodded slowly. "By the time they died, there was almost nothing left. I'd used up the savings, the retirement account, even sold some of Mom's jewelry to pay for medical expenses." Maya digested this information. It was possible that their parents' final illness had been more expensive than she had realized. She was 2 hours away, visiting when she could, but not involved in the daily financial decisions. But that doesn't explain the forged documents. If you'd just told me the truth about the estate, I would have understood. Zara's hands trembled as she picked up her coffee cup. "After they died, I was in debt. Deep debt. I'd put thousands of dollars on credit cards to cover expenses that I thought the estate would reimburse me, but there was no estate to reimburse me." "How much debt?" $80,000. Maybe more. Maya whistled softly. "Zara, why didn't you tell me?" "Because I was ashamed. Because you'd always been the responsible one, the one who saved money and made smart decisions. I couldn't bear to admit that I'd mismanaged everything so badly." "So you decided to steal from me instead." Zara flinched at the word steal.
I thought I could fix it. I thought if I could sell the house, I could pay off the debts and still give you your share. But the house needed so much work before it could sell for a decent price. So you renovated it using what money? I took out loans against the property, but the banks required both our signatures, Zara trailed off. So you forged my signature on the loan documents. I was going to pay everything back. I had it all planned out. The renovations would increase the value enough to cover the loans and the debt and still leave plenty for both of us. Maya leaned back in her chair, trying to process the scope of Zara's deception. How many documents did you forge?
I don't know. Several. The power of attorney, the loan applications, some insurance forms. The codicil to the will? Zara looked confused. What codicil? The document that supposedly transferred my ownership interest to you. I didn't create that. I've never seen it before. Maya studied her sister's face. Zara was lying about many things, but her confusion about the codicils seemed genuine. If you didn't create it, who did? I don't know. Maybe the lawyers at Peterson and Associates. Maybe they needed something for their files when I told them I had power of attorney. Maya made a mental note to have Sarah investigate the codicil more thoroughly. What about the estate inventory you filed with the probate court? The one that claimed there were no assets left? Zara's shoulders sagged. I was trying to protect myself. If the court knew how much money I'd spent, they might have questioned my decisions. I thought it was easier to just say everything had been used for medical expenses. Even though that was perjury? I didn't think of it that way. I thought I was just simplifying a complicated situation. Maya felt a headache building behind her eyes. Every answer led to more questions, more lies, more evidence of her sister's willingness to break the law rather than admit her mistakes. Zara, do you understand what you've done? You've committed multiple felonies. You've stolen hundreds of thousands of dollars. You've lied to banks, lawyers, and court officials. I know. Zara's voice was barely a whisper. I know I messed up, but Maya, I never meant to hurt you. I was trying to solve my problems without dragging you into them. By stealing my inheritance? By borrowing against it, I was going to pay you back with interest. Maya shook her head. That's not how inheritance works, Zara. You can't borrow someone else's property without their permission. I know that now, but at the time I was desperate. I wasn't thinking clearly. They sat in silence for several minutes. Maya watched her sister, looking for signs of the person she'd grown up with. But all she could see was someone who'd made a series of increasingly bad decisions and then compounded them with lies and fraud. What happens now? Zara asked, finally. I don't know. The district attorney wants to prosecute you. My lawyer thinks you could be facing serious prison time. Is there anything I can do? Any way to make this right? Maya considered the question. You could start by telling the truth. All of it. To me, to the lawyers, to the district attorney. No more lies, no more half-truths. And then? Then you could cooperate with the investigation. Help them understand exactly what happened and why. Would that keep me out of prison? I don't know, but it might reduce the charges. Zara stared out the window of the coffee shop, watching people walk by on the sidewalk. Maya, I need you to know that I never wanted things to turn out this way. I love you. You're my sister. Maya felt tears threatening for the first time since this whole ordeal had begun. If you love me, Zara, then tell me why. Why was it easier to forge my signature than to ask for my help? Why was it easier to steal from me than to trust me? Zara was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. Because asking for help would have meant admitting that I'm not the person everyone thinks I am. The artistic one, the creative one, the one who follows her dreams instead of worrying about money. I've built my whole identity around being different from you, around not caring about practical things. But the truth is, I'm terrible at managing money. I'm terrible at making responsible decisions. I've been living beyond my means for years, and I was too proud to admit it. Maya felt something inside her chest crack open. This was the most honest thing Zara had said in years. Maybe ever. So, you decided to steal from our dead parents,
and forge legal documents. I made a series of bad decisions that kept getting worse. Each lie required another lie to cover it up. Each forgery required another forgery to make it believable. By the time I realized how far I'd gone, I couldn't see any way back. Maya reached across the table and took her sister's hand. There's always a way back, Zara, but it requires telling the truth and accepting the consequences. Even if the consequences include prison? Even then. They sat holding hands across the small table, two sisters who'd shared a childhood and lost their way as adults. Maya felt a complex mix of emotions: anger at the betrayal, sadness for the loss of trust, and a strange kind of relief that the truth was finally coming out. "I need some time to think," Maya said finally, "about the criminal charges, about the civil lawsuit, about what I want to happen next." "I understand. But Zara, I need you to promise me something." "What?" "No more lies. Whatever happens from here, I need you to tell the truth. To me, to the lawyers, to everyone involved in cleaning up this mess." Zara nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I promise." Maya left the coffee shop feeling emotionally drained, but somehow clearer about what she needed to do. She drove back to the city and called Sarah Chen. "I met with Zara. She admitted to the forgeries and the financial fraud."
That's good. It shows consciousness of guilt, which will be helpful if we go to trial. Sarah, I need to ask you something. If Zara cooperates fully with the investigation and makes restitution for what she stole, is there any chance the district attorney would consider reducing the charges? It's possible. Cooperation and restitution are factors that prosecutors consider. Why? Are you thinking about asking them to go easy on her? Maya stared out the window of her apartment, watching the sun set over the city skyline. She's still my sister, and despite everything she's done, I don't want to see her spend 15 years in prison. Maya, I understand that this is difficult, but you need to think about more than just your relationship with Zara. She committed serious crimes that affected multiple people: the new owners of your house, the banks she defrauded, the court system she lied to. This isn't just about your family anymore. I know, but if she makes full restitution and cooperates with the investigation, wouldn't that serve justice better than just sending her to prison? Sarah was quiet for a moment. "Let me talk to the district attorney. I'll see what kind of plea agreement might be possible if Zara is willing to admit guilt and cooperate fully." Over the next week, Sarah negotiated with the district attorney's office, while Maya tried to process her conflicted feelings about her sister. Part of her wanted Zara to face the full consequences of her actions, but another part of her remembered the scared, vulnerable woman who'd sat across from her in the coffee shop, finally telling the truth about years of lies and bad decisions. The breakthrough came when Sarah called on Friday afternoon with news. "The DA is willing to consider a plea agreement," Sarah said, "if Zara pleads guilty to all charges and cooperates fully with the investigation. They'll recommend a sentence of 5 years in prison with the possibility of early parole if she makes full restitution." 5 years instead of 15? Plus, she'd have to pay back everything she stole, with interest and penalties. We're talking about close to $700,000 when you include the value of your property interest and the estate fraud. Maya did some quick math. Even if Zara sold everything she owned, she'd never be able to come up with $700,000. What happens if she can't make full restitution? Then she serves the full 5 years, and you can pursue civil remedies to recover your losses. Maya thought about this for a moment. What about the house? The new owners who bought it thinking the sale was legitimate? That's still being worked out. The DA's office is trying to determine whether the buyers have any legal responsibility to return the property. It's complicated because they purchased it in good faith. And if they don't have to return it, then Zara would be responsible for compensating you for the full value of your 50% interest, plus damages. Maya hung up the phone and sat in her apartment staring at the wall. $700,000. It was more money than Zara could possibly have, which meant Maya would probably never see full compensation for what her sister had stolen. But maybe that wasn't the point anymore. Maybe the point was that Zara would finally be held accountable for her actions, and Maya could begin to rebuild her life without the weight of family betrayal hanging over her. Maya called the district attorney's office and asked to speak with James Rodriguez. Ms. Brennan, I understand your lawyer has been discussing a plea agreement with us? Yes, I wanted to tell you that I support the proposed deal. If my sister is willing to plead guilty and cooperate fully, I think 5 years is appropriate. Are you sure? Given the scope of the fraud, we could probably get a conviction on the original charges. I'm sure. But I want to make one thing clear. If she doesn't honor the plea agreement, if she tries to minimize her guilt or refuses to cooperate, then I want you to prosecute her to the fullest extent of the law. Understood. We'll be in touch. Maya called Zara that evening and explained the plea agreement. Her sister was quiet for a long time after Maya finished talking. 5 years, Zara said finally. It's better than 15. I know. I'm grateful. Maya, I don't know how to thank you for this. Don't thank me yet. You still have to plead guilty, cooperate with the investigation, and make restitution. If you don't follow through on any part of that, the deal is off. I understand. I'll do whatever I have to do. Zara, I need you to understand something. This plea agreement doesn't mean I forgive you. It doesn't mean we're going back to being the sisters we used to be. You betrayed my trust in the worst possible way, and that's not something I can just get over. I know. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want the chance to try to make things right. Then take the deal. Plead guilty. Tell the truth. And serve your time. The plea hearing was scheduled for the following month. In the meantime, Maya focused on trying to get her life back to normal. She threw herself into her work, started going to the gym again, began seeing a therapist to help her process the emotional trauma of her sister's betrayal. The therapist, Dr. Elizabeth Warren, was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a direct manner that Maya appreciated. You've been through a significant trauma. Betrayal by a family member is one of the most difficult experiences a person can face. I keep thinking I should have seen it coming. There were signs. Zara's vague explanations about money, her expensive lifestyle, the way she always seemed to have funds for things without any apparent source of income. Family members are often the last to see these kinds of patterns because we want to believe the best about the people we love. But I'm supposed to be the practical one, the one who pays attention to details. How did I miss something this big? Dr. Warren leaned forward. Maya, your sister spent years carefully constructing lies to hide her criminal behavior. She forged documents, deceived professionals, lied to court officials. You're not a criminal investigator. You're a sister who trusted someone you'd known your whole life. Over several sessions, Maya began to understand that her feelings of guilt and self-blame were normal but misplaced. She wasn't responsible for Zara's choices, and she couldn't have prevented something she didn't know was happening. But the bigger question remained, what kind of relationship, if any, could she have with Zara going forward? Some relationships don't survive this kind of betrayal, and that's okay.
You don't owe anyone forgiveness or reconciliation, not even family members. But she's my only sister. When she gets out of prison, she'll have no one else. That's not your responsibility, Maya. Zara created this situation through her own choices. Whatever consequences she faces are the result of her actions, not yours. Maya thought about this as the plea hearing approached. She'd agreed to support the reduced sentence, but that didn't mean she was obligated to maintain a relationship with Zara afterward. The morning of the plea hearing, Maya sat in the back of the courtroom and watched her sister stand before the judge. Zara looked smaller than usual in her conservative blue suit, her hair pulled back severely, her face pale but composed. The judge read the charges: conspiracy to commit fraud, forgery, perjury, theft. 5 felony counts that added up to a life-changing criminal record. Ms. Brennan, how do you plead to the charge of conspiracy to commit fraud? Guilty, Your Honor. How do you plead to the charge of forgery in the first degree? Guilty, Your Honor. Maya watched her sister plead guilty to each charge, her voice steady but quiet. When the judge asked if she understood the consequences of her plea, Zara nodded. Yes, Your Honor. I understand that I'm facing 5 years in prison and that I'm required to make full restitution to the victims of my crimes. The judge scheduled sentencing for 6 weeks later and remanded Zara to the custody of the court pending a pre-sentence investigation. As the bailiff led her sister away in handcuffs, Zara turned and looked at Maya one last time. Maya met her eyes but didn't wave or smile.
She felt sad, but also relieved. After months of lies and legal proceedings, her sister was finally being held accountable for what she'd done. Outside the courthouse, James Rodriguez approached Maya. "Your sister will be transferred to the county jail pending sentencing," he said. "The pre-sentence investigation will take several weeks, but given her cooperation and the plea agreement, she'll likely serve the full 5 years." "What about restitution?" "That's more complicated. We've identified about $200,000 in assets that she can liquidate, but that's far short of what she owes you." Maya nodded. She'd expected this. "What happens to the rest?" "You can pursue civil remedies, but frankly, if she doesn't have the money, you'll probably never recover it all." "And the house?" "The new owners have agreed to sell it back to you at the price they paid for it, plus their closing costs and moving expenses. They're not legally required to do this, but they feel bad about the situation." Maya felt a surge of gratitude toward these strangers who were willing to give up their new home to help right a wrong they had no part in creating. "When can we finalize that?" "As soon as you can arrange financing. Your sister's conviction should help with the title issues." Maya left the courthouse feeling lighter than she had in months. She would get her childhood home back, Zara would serve time for her crimes, and Maya could begin to rebuild her life. But first, she had a decision to make about whether to visit her sister in jail. Maya spent several days considering whether to see Zara before sentencing. Part of her felt like she should, like saying goodbye properly was important for both of them. But another part of her worried that seeing Zara in jail would weaken her resolve to maintain boundaries. Dr. Warren encouraged her to trust her instincts. "What feels right to you?" the therapist asked. "I think I need to see her one more time. Not to forgive her or make promises about the future, but to have some kind of closure." "That sounds reasonable. Just remember that you don't owe her anything, including comfort or false hope." Maya made an appointment to visit Zara at the county jail the following week. The visiting room was sterile and depressing, filled with plastic chairs and fluorescent lighting. Zara appeared after a few minutes, wearing an orange jumpsuit that made her look younger and more vulnerable. "Thank you for coming," Zara said as they sat across from each other at a small table. "I wanted to see how you were doing." "As well as can be expected, I guess. The lawyer says I'll probably be transferred to a minimum security facility after sentencing, somewhere I can work and maybe take classes." Maya nodded. "That's good." They sat in awkward silence for a moment before Zara spoke again. "Maya, I know you don't want to hear this, but I need to say it anyway. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for stealing from you, for lying to you, for betraying your trust. I'm sorry for destroying our family." Maya looked at her sister's face, searching for signs of manipulation or self-pity, but all she saw was genuine remorse and exhaustion. "I believe that you're sorry, but being sorry doesn't undo what you did." "I know. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I understand what I've lost." "What have you lost?" "You, our relationship, any chance of being the sister you deserved." Maya felt tears threatening again. "Zara, you were the sister I deserved. For most of our lives, you were. But somewhere along the way, you chose money and lies over honesty and family." "I know, and I'll regret that for the rest of my life." Maya reached across the table and touched her sister's hand briefly. "I hope prison gives you time to figure out who you want to be when you get out. Because the person who did these things, who stole and lied and forged documents, that's not the sister I remember." "What happens when I get out? Will you ever be able to have a relationship with me?" Maya had been dreading this question. "I don't know. Maybe someday. But it would have to be a completely different kind of relationship, built on honesty and accountability. And it would take time. Years, probably." Zara nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I understand." "Zara, I want you to know something. When you get out of prison, I won't be responsible for helping you rebuild your life. You'll have to do that yourself. I wouldn't expect you to. But I also won't try to make things harder for you. I won't interfere with your efforts to find work or housing or whatever you need, as long as you stay honest and don't try to involve me in any schemes or lies. Thank you."
That means more than you know. Maya stood up to leave. "Take care of yourself, Zara. Use this time to become someone better." "I will. I love you, Maya." Maya paused at the door of the visiting room. "I love you too. But love isn't enough anymore." As Maya walked out of the jail and into the afternoon sunlight,
She felt a sense of finality that was both sad and liberating. She'd said what she needed to say to her sister, and now she could focus on moving forward with her own life. The sentencing hearing 2 weeks later was brief and businesslike. The judge sentenced Zara to 5 years in prison, as outlined in the plea agreement, and ordered full restitution to be paid over the course of her incarceration and subsequent probation. Maya didn't attend the hearing. She'd said goodbye to her sister already, and watching her be sentenced felt unnecessary. Instead, Maya spent that day meeting with a real estate agent about buying back her childhood home. The new owners, a young couple named David and Jennifer Martinez, had been incredibly understanding about the situation. "We feel terrible about what happened," Jennifer said as they walked through the house together. "We had no idea the sale was fraudulent." "It's not your fault," Maya assured her. "You bought the house in good faith." "We've grown attached to it," David added. "But we understand that it belongs to you." Maya looked around the renovated space, taking in the modern kitchen and the exposed brick walls. The house was beautiful in its current form, but it felt like a museum rather than a home. "Would you be interested in staying as tenants?" Maya asked impulsively. "At least until you find another place you like." The Martinezes looked at each other in surprise. "Really? The house is too big for just me, and you've clearly taken good care of it. If you'd like to rent it for a while, we could work something out." And so Maya found herself becoming a landlord to the people who'd unknowingly bought her stolen inheritance. It was an unusual arrangement, but it felt right somehow. The Martinezes were good people who'd been victimized by Zara's fraud just as much as Maya had been. Maya moved into the guest bedroom of her childhood home while she figured out her next steps. Living there felt strange at first, sleeping in a room that bore no resemblance to the space where she'd grown up. But gradually, she began to feel at peace with the changes. The house was still her family home, even if it looked different now. The bones were the same, the foundation was solid, and slowly Maya began to fill it with new memories that belonged to her alone. She kept one photo of her and Zara as children, taken in the backyard on a summer day when they were 8 and 10 years old. In the picture, they were both grinning, their arms around each other, covered in mud from some long-forgotten adventure. Maya put the photo in a drawer in her bedroom. Not hidden, but not displayed either. A reminder of who they used to be, before greed and lies and betrayal changed everything. Sometimes, late at night, Maya would walk through the renovated house and try to imagine her parents' reaction to what had happened. Would they be heartbroken that one daughter had stolen from the other? Would they be proud that Maya had stood up for herself? Would they understand why she'd chosen justice over family loyalty? Maya thought they would understand. Her parents had been honest people who believed in doing the right thing, even when it was difficult. They'd raised both daughters to be strong and independent, to make their own choices and live with the consequences. Zara had made her choices, and now she was living with the consequences. Maya had made her choices too, and she was learning to live with them as well. 6 months after Zara's sentencing, Maya received a letter from her sister. It was the first communication they'd had since the jail visit. The letter was brief and carefully written, clearly composed over many drafts. Zara wrote about the prison library where she was working, the accounting classes she was taking, the counseling sessions that were helping her understand the thinking patterns that had led to her criminal behavior. She didn't ask for forgiveness or promise that things would be different when she got out. She simply shared what she was doing with her time and thanked Maya for supporting the plea agreement that had reduced her sentence. At the end of the letter, Zara wrote, "I know I have no right to ask this, but would it be okay if I wrote to you occasionally? Not to ask for anything or to try to repair our relationship, but just to have some connection to the person I used to be before I became someone I didn't recognize." Maya read the letter 3 times before deciding how to respond. She wrote back a short note saying that occasional letters would be acceptable as long as Zara understood that Maya wasn't ready for regular correspondence or visits. Over the next year, Zara wrote every few months. Her letters were always brief and focused on her prison activities rather than emotional appeals or expressions of regret. Maya appreciated this restraint, and gradually she began to look forward to hearing about her sister's progress. Zara earned her high school equivalency degree, completed a bookkeeping certification program, and began facilitating a support group for inmates with addiction issues. She seemed to be using her time productively, working to become someone who could function honestly in the world when she was released. Maya shared very little about her own life in her brief responses, but she did mention that she'd moved back into their childhood home and was renting part of it to the couple who'd unknowingly bought it from Zara. In one letter, Zara wrote, "I'm glad you're living in the house again. I know I changed it too much, made it into something that didn't feel like home anymore, but maybe you can change it back or change it into something new that feels right to you." Maya realized that this was probably the closest thing to an apology she would ever get for the destruction of their family memorabilia and the sterile renovation that had erased their childhood. As Zara's third year in prison began, Maya started to think seriously about what kind of relationship, if any, she wanted to have with her sister when she was released. Dr. Warren had helped her understand that forgiveness was a process, not an event, and that she didn't have to decide everything at once. Some relationships can survive betrayal, but they're never the same afterward. The question isn't whether you can go back to being the sisters you used to be, because you can't. The question is whether you can build something new that feels authentic and safe for both of you. Maya wasn't sure she was ready for that kind of rebuilding yet, but she was beginning to think it might be possible someday if Zara continued to demonstrate genuine change and if Maya could find a way to trust again. For now, it was enough that Zara was serving her time, taking responsibility for her actions, and working to become someone better. And it was enough that Maya had reclaimed her inheritance, rebuilt her life, and learned to set boundaries with people who had hurt her. The rest could wait until Zara was released, and they could have an honest conversation about what kind of future, if any, they wanted to build together. Maya had learned that justice didn't always look like revenge, and that healing didn't always require forgiveness. Sometimes it was enough to hold people accountable for their actions, and then focus on building a life that felt true to your own values. As she sat in the garden behind her child at home, watching the sunset through the old oak tree that somehow hadn't been removed during Zara's renovations, Maya felt something she hadn't experienced in years: peace. Her sister had stolen her inheritance and broken her trust, but she hadn't stolen Maya's strength or her ability to rebuild. And in the end, that might be the most important thing of all. 2 years had passed since Maya last sat in this garden, and everything felt different now. The Martinezes had moved out 6 months ago, finding a house they loved in the next town over. They left as friends, staying in touch, and even inviting Maya to their housewarming party. Their tenancy had been exactly what Maya needed during those transitional years, providing income while she figured out what she truly wanted to do with her inheritance. The house was entirely hers again now, and she'd spent the past 6 months slowly transforming it into something that honored both its history and her future. The sterile modern kitchen remained, but Maya had added her mother's recipe collection, framed on the walls, and filled the windowsills with the herbs her father used to grow. The open-concept living space stayed, but she'd arranged comfortable furniture that invited conversation rather than admiration. Maya had also made her own changes. She'd converted her father's old office into a home studio where she was exploring photography, something she'd always wanted to try but never had time for when she lived in the city. The guest room had become a proper library, filled with books she had inherited from her parents, plus hundreds of new ones she'd collected during her sabbatical from corporate life. Because that was the other major change.
Maya had used part of her settlement money to take an extended break from her demanding job in the city. For the first time in her adult life, she had the luxury of time to think about what she actually wanted rather than what she thought she should want. The doorbell chimed, interrupting her afternoon reading. Maya wasn't expecting anyone, but when she opened the door, she found a woman about her age holding a manila envelope. Maya Brennan? Yes.
I'm angry about what she did, but I don't want her to suffer unnecessarily. She seemed composed and thoughtful, very different from what I'd expect from someone who's been in prison for 4 years. That evening, Maya received a text message from an unknown number. Maya, this is Zara. The prosecutor gave me permission to contact you. I wanted to thank you for testifying today. I know it wasn't easy. I hope it helps stop Peterson from hurting other families. Maya stared at the message for several minutes before responding. Your testimony was important too. I'm glad you were honest about what happened. Can I ask you something? Came Zara's reply. What? When I get out in a few months, would you be willing to meet for coffee? Not to ask for forgiveness or to try to fix our relationship, but just to talk honestly about where we go from here. Maya set down her phone and walked to the hotel window, looking out at the city lights. 4 years ago, she would have said no immediately. Even 2 years ago, she might have needed more time to consider it. But now, after hearing about Peterson's manipulation and seeing evidence of Zara's genuine efforts to change, Maya found herself curious about who her sister had become. Yes, she texted back, but just coffee, and just to talk. I understand. Thank you. The trial concluded 2 weeks later with guilty verdicts on all counts for Peterson and his associates. Peterson was sentenced to 12 years in prison and ordered to pay full restitution to his victims. Maya's share of the restitution would be about $50,000, nowhere near full compensation, but more than she'd expected to see. More importantly to Maya, the conviction sent a message that this kind of fraud wouldn't be tolerated. Chen told her that several other families had come forward with similar cases after the trial received media coverage. Zara was released from prison on a sunny day in April, almost exactly 5 years after her sentencing. Maya didn't attend the release, but she knew from their correspondence that Zara had arranged to live in a halfway house in a town about an hour from Millbrook while she completed her parole requirements. They didn't communicate for the first month after Zara's release. Maya wanted to give her sister time to adjust to life outside prison without the pressure of family obligations. But when Zara texted to ask if she was still willing to meet for coffee, Maya agreed. They chose the same cafe where they'd had their confrontational conversation 5 years earlier, but this time Maya arrived to find it had changed hands. The new owners had kept the cozy atmosphere but updated the menu and decor. It felt appropriate somehow, familiar but different. Maya arrived first and was surprised by her own nervousness. She hadn't seen Zara in person since the jail visit years earlier, and she wasn't sure what to expect. The woman who walked in 10 minutes later was recognizably her sister, but noticeably changed. Zara looked older, which was natural after 5 years, but she also looked more grounded somehow. She wore simple clothes, no makeup, and her hair was shorter than Maya remembered, but her eyes were clearer, more direct than they'd been before her incarceration. "Thank you for coming," Zara said as she sat down across from Maya. "How are you adjusting to being out?" "It's overwhelming sometimes. Everything seems faster, louder, more complicated than I remembered." Zara ordered black coffee, Maya noticed, instead of her old preference for elaborate specialty drinks. "But I'm grateful to be here." They talked for a few minutes about practical matters: Zara's job at a nonprofit that helped former inmates with employment and housing, her small apartment near the halfway house, and the parole requirements that would govern her life for the next 3 years. "I want you to know that I've paid back about $40,000 so far toward the restitution I owed you," Zara said. "It's going to take a long time to pay back everything, but I'm committed to doing it. I know, the lawyer has been sending me the payments. I also want you to know that I'm in therapy. I have been for the past 3 years. I'm working on understanding the thinking patterns that led me to make such destructive choices." Maya nodded. "What have you learned?" Zara considered the question carefully. "I learned that I spent most of my life avoiding responsibility by pretending that practical concerns were beneath me. I told myself I was artistic and creative and that other people should handle the boring details.
but that was just an excuse for not growing up. And now? Now I understand that being an adult means taking responsibility for your actions and their consequences. It means being honest even when the truth is uncomfortable. It means considering how your choices affect other people. Maya studied her sister's face, looking for signs of the manipulation and self-justification that had characterized their interactions before Zara's imprisonment. But all she saw was what appeared to be genuine self-awareness. "Do you still paint?" Maya asked. Zara smiled, the first real smile Maya had seen from her that day. "I do, but differently now. I paint what I see and feel rather than what I think will impress people or sell well. It's more honest work." "That sounds good." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment before Zara spoke again. "Maya, I know I hurt you in ways that can't be undone. I know I broke your trust and destroyed our relationship. I'm not asking for forgiveness, and I'm not asking to go back to being the sisters we used to be. What are you asking for?" "I'm asking if we can start over, not as the people we were, but as the people we are now. I'm asking if we can build something new based on honesty and respect, rather than trying to repair something that's permanently broken." Maya had been thinking about this possibility for months, ever since their correspondence had begun to feel genuine rather than obligatory. The sister sitting across from her seemed like someone she could potentially trust again, but trust would have to be earned gradually through consistent actions rather than promised in words. "I think we can try," Maya said finally, "but it will have to be very different from before." "How do you mean?" "I mean, we'll have to be completely honest with each other, even when it's uncomfortable. I mean, we'll have to respect each other's boundaries and not assume we're entitled to anything just because we're sisters. I mean, we'll have to build this relationship from scratch, one conversation at a time." Zara nodded. "I'd like that. I'd like to get to know who you've become during these past 5 years. Who have I become? Someone stronger, someone who stands up for herself, someone who doesn't let other people define her worth." Maya felt tears threatening, but pushed them back. "Prison changed you too. It gave me time to think about who I wanted to be instead of just reacting to whatever crisis I'd created for myself." They finished their coffee and walked outside together. Maya felt awkward about how to say goodbye.
A hug seemed too intimate given everything that had happened, but a handshake seemed too formal for sisters. Zara solved the problem by simply saying, "Would it be okay if we did this again sometime, maybe in a few weeks?" "I'd like that," Maya replied. As Maya drove home to Millbrook, she thought about the conversation and what it might mean for their future relationship. She wasn't ready to trust Zara completely, and she wasn't sure she ever would be, but she was willing to see if they could build something new together. Over the next few months, Maya and Zara met for coffee every 3 or 4 weeks. They talked about books, current events, their respective work, and gradually their childhood memories. It felt strange to revisit shared experiences with someone who'd betrayed her so deeply, but Maya found that some memories could be separated from the pain of recent events. Zara never asked to visit the family house, and Maya appreciated this restraint. The house was Maya's sanctuary now, and she wasn't ready to share it with anyone who reminded her of the chaos and deception that had once threatened to destroy her peace. But their conversations began to feel more natural, less careful. Zara would mention frustrations with her job or amusing incidents from her therapy sessions. Maya talked about her photography projects and her tentative plans to start a consulting business that would let her work part-time while pursuing creative interests. 6 months after their first post-prison coffee meeting, Zara surprised Maya with a request. "I want to show you something I've been working on," Zara said. "It's an art project, but it's also an apology. Would you be willing to come to my apartment to see it?" Maya hesitated. Visiting Zara's apartment felt like a bigger step than their neutral coffee meetings, but her curiosity won out. Zara's apartment was small and sparse, furnished with secondhand pieces that were clean and functional rather than stylish. But the walls were covered with paintings, dozens of them, all small canvases that appeared to tell a story. "I've been painting our childhood," Zara explained. "But not the idealized version I used to remember. The real version, including the times I was selfish or mean or dishonest." Maya walked slowly around the room, studying the paintings.
There was 8-year-old Zara taking credit for a drawing that Maya had actually created. Teenage Zara borrowing Maya's favorite sweater without asking and returning it stained. Young adult Zara accepting money from their parents while knowing that Maya was struggling financially in the city. "This is painful to look at," Maya said. It was painful to paint, but I needed to be honest about who I was before I could figure out who I wanted to become. Maya stopped in front of a painting that showed 2 adult women in a coffee shop, one wearing orange prison clothing and the other in civilian clothes, reaching across a table toward each other, but not quite touching. Is this us? It's us starting over. It's what I hope we're doing. Maya stared at the painting for a long time. It captured something she'd felt but hadn't been able to articulate about their recent interactions. They were reaching toward each other, but carefully, without the automatic intimacy that had once characterized their relationship. "Zara, these paintings are beautiful and honest. They're my way of taking responsibility, not just for the fraud, but for all the ways I failed to be a good sister over the years." Maya turned to look at her sister. "What are you going to do with them?" "I want to give them to you. All of them. Not as payment for what I owe you, but as an acknowledgement of what I took from you and what I hope we can build together." Maya felt overwhelmed. The paintings were clearly valuable, representing months of work, but more than that, they were a gesture of vulnerability and accountability that she hadn't expected. "I can't take all of them," Maya said, "but maybe I could take 1 or 2. "Which ones?" Maya looked around the room again and chose 2 paintings. One showed their parents' house as it had been during their childhood, with the blue shutters and wraparound porch and old oak tree. The other showed the same house after Zara's renovations, sterile and modern, but somehow empty. "These 2 capture something important about what we lost and what we're trying to rebuild," Maya explained. "I'm glad they speak to you." As Maya prepared to leave, Zara handed her a manila envelope. "There's one more thing. I wrote you a letter, a real apology, not the kind I've been giving you in person where I'm trying to manage your reaction. This is everything I want to say without worrying about how you'll respond." Maya took the envelope but didn't open it immediately. "Should I read it now?" "Read it when you're ready. And Maya, you don't have to respond to it if you don't want to." Maya drove home with the letter on the passenger seat, unsure when she'd feel ready to read it. That evening, she hung Zara's paintings in her home office, where they could remind her of both the pain of betrayal and the possibility of redemption. 2 days later, she finally opened the letter. It was 5 pages long, handwritten in Zara's careful script. The apology was comprehensive and specific, acknowledging not just the fraud, but years of selfishness and manipulation. Zara took responsibility for the pattern of behavior that had led to the crimes, and she outlined the specific steps she was taking to change. But the part that moved Maya most was near the end. "I know I have no right to ask for your love or trust or even your time, but I want you to know that having you in my life again, even in this limited way, has been the most healing thing about my re-entry into society. You could have walked away completely and no one would have blamed you. The fact that you were willing to give me a chance to show you who I'm becoming is a gift I don't take for granted." Maya read the letter twice before putting it away. She didn't respond immediately, but she kept thinking about Zara's words over the next few weeks. Their coffee meetings continued, gradually becoming more frequent and more personal. Maya began to share more about her own life, her struggles with trust and intimacy in the aftermath of Zara's betrayal, her efforts to build a life that felt authentic rather than reactive. "I think you've become exactly who you were meant to be. Independent, strong, creative. I'm proud of the life you've built. Even though it doesn't include much space for family, especially because you chose it for yourself rather than letting other people's expectations define it." Maya appreciated this perspective. She'd wondered sometimes if her more solitary life was a healthy choice or a defensive reaction to being hurt. But Zara was right that it felt authentic, chosen rather than imposed. As winter turned to spring, Maya found herself looking forward to their meetings in a way that surprised her. Not because she was forgetting what Zara had done, but because she was genuinely interested in who Zara was becoming. "I have something to tell you," Zara said during their April coffee meeting. "I've been offered a job in the city, a nonprofit that works with financial fraud victims. They want me to help design programs for people whose families have been torn apart by economic crimes." Maya felt a complex mix of emotions. Pride that Zara was being recognized for her efforts to make amends, concern about how city life might affect her recovery, and something that might have been sadness at the thought of their regular meetings ending. "That sounds like meaningful work," Maya said. "It does, but it would mean moving away from here, and I wanted to know how you felt about that." Maya was touched that Zara was consulting her about the decision. A year ago, she would have expected Zara to make whatever choice served her own interests, but this felt like genuine consideration for Maya's feelings. "I think you should take the job if it's what you want," Maya said.
We can stay in touch however feels right. Are you sure? I don't want you to think I'm running away from the work we've been doing to rebuild our relationship. I think the work we've been doing has prepared you for this opportunity. And Zara, I think Mom and Dad would be proud of the way you're using your experience to help other people. Zara's eyes filled with tears. That means everything to me. 2 months later, Maya helped Zara move to the city. It was the first time they'd spent an entire day together since before Zara's arrest, and Maya was surprised by how comfortable it felt. They worked well together, packing and organizing with an efficiency that reminded Maya of their childhood collaborations. Zara's new apartment was small but bright, in a diverse neighborhood full of young professionals and immigrant families. She'd furnished it simply but thoughtfully, with a few pieces of good quality rather than many cheap ones. "This feels like home," Zara said as they finished arranging her art supplies in the corner that would serve as her studio. "It suits you. The new you, I mean." "Maya, can I ask you something?" "What?" "Do you think we'll ever be close again? Really close, the way sisters are supposed to be." Maya considered the question honestly. "I don't know. I think we'll always have a relationship now, which is more than I thought possible 5 years ago. But I don't know if we'll ever have the kind of unconditional trust that some siblings have." "I can live with that," Zara said, "as long as we keep being honest with each other." "We will." As Maya drove home to Millbrook that evening, she reflected on the journey they'd taken together. 5 years ago, she'd discovered that her sister had stolen her inheritance and destroyed their family home. She'd felt betrayed, angry, and completely alone. Now she had her house back, transformed into something that honored both its history and her own vision for the future. She had a sister who was genuinely working to make amends and become a better person. She had a life that felt chosen rather than imposed, built on her own values rather than other people's expectations. The relationship with Zara would never be the same as it had been before the fraud. But maybe that was for the best. Their old relationship had been built on assumptions and avoidance, on Maya's willingness to trust without verification, and Zara's willingness to take without considering the consequences. Their new relationship was built on honesty, accountability, and mutual respect. It was more fragile than their old bond, but it was also more authentic. Maya thought about the painting hanging in her office, the one that showed 2 women reaching toward each other across a table. They were still reaching, still building something new together, and that felt like enough. 6 months later, Maya received an unexpected call from Zara. "I have news," Zara said, her voice bright with excitement. "The nonprofit wants to expand the Fraud Victim Services Program, and they're asking me to write a grant proposal. If we get funding, I'll be able to hire a team and really make a difference." "That's wonderful," Maya said, and she meant it. "There's something else. They want me to include victim testimonials in the proposal, and I was hoping you might be willing to contribute yours." Maya thought about this request. Sharing her story publicly felt like a final step in reclaiming her narrative from the shame and secrecy that had surrounded the fraud. "I'll do it, but I want to include something about the possibility of healing and rebuilding, not just the damage that fraud causes." "I was hoping you'd say that." As Maya wrote her testimonial over the next few weeks, she found herself thinking about the many ways her life had been shaped by her sister's betrayal and subsequent redemption. The experience had taught her to trust her instincts, set clear boundaries, and build a life based on her own values rather than other people's expectations. But it had also taught her that people could change, that relationships could be rebuilt on better foundations, and that justice didn't always require permanent punishment. Maya finished her testimonial by writing, "Financial fraud doesn't just steal money, it steals trust, security, and family relationships. But with accountability, honest communication, and time, it's possible to rebuild what matters most. My sister and I will never have the relationship we once had, but we've built something new that's based on truth rather than assumptions. That feels like its own kind of justice." 6 months later, Zara called to tell Maya that the grant had been approved. The Fraud Victim Services Program would receive 3 years of funding to expand their work helping families navigate the aftermath of financial crimes. "I couldn't have done this without your story," Zara said. "Thank you for being willing to share it." "Thank you for becoming someone worth rebuilding a relationship with," Maya replied. They talked for another hour about Zara's work, Maya's photography projects, and their plans to spend Thanksgiving together for the first time in 6 years. It wouldn't be at the household. They'd agreed on neutral territory at a restaurant, but it felt like an important step. As Maya hung up the phone, she walked through her house looking at the photographs she'd taken and framed, the paintings Zara had given her, the books she'd collected during her sabbatical from corporate life. Everything in the house told the story of who she'd become rather than who she lost. Maya thought about her parents and how they might view the choices both daughters had made. She believed they would be saddened by Zara's crimes, but proud of her efforts to make amends. She thought they would understand Maya's decision to pursue justice while leaving room for redemption. Most of all, she thought they would be glad that their daughters had found a way back to each other, not as the people they'd been, but as the people they'd chosen to become. That evening, Maya sat in her garden as the sun set behind the old oak tree that had somehow survived all the changes the house had undergone. She thought about the young woman who discovered her sister's betrayal 5 years ago, how lost and angry and isolated she'd felt. That woman couldn't have imagined the life Maya now had, a life of intentional solitude rather than imposed isolation. A career that balanced financial security with creative fulfillment. A relationship with her sister that was honest and mutual rather than based on assumption and obligation. Maya had learned that justice doesn't always require punishment, that healing wasn't always about forgiveness, and that sometimes the most important thing you could give someone was the chance to prove they'd changed. But most importantly, she'd learned that she was strong enough to survive betrayal, wise enough to set appropriate boundaries, and generous enough to leave room for redemption when it was genuinely sought. As Maya locked up the house and prepared for bed, she felt grateful for the journey that had brought her to this point. It hadn't been the life she'd planned, but it was the life she'd chosen, built piece by piece from the wreckage of what came before. And that, Maya thought as she turned off the lights, was enough.
Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.